Hello, everyone, folks that are coming in. We are going to get started in just a few seconds. I know folks are getting logged in, getting connected to the audio. Just want to welcome you to our webinar today, the Homelessness in Higher Education, Creative Housing Solutions. We have a great panel here today. So again, we're just going to get started in a few seconds. Welcome. And we will start in just a little bit. Just a reminder, we are recording this webinar, so folks need to head out early. Know that we will be sending you a copy of this recording to you, as well as the PowerPoint slides afterwards. All right. I think the numbers are getting settled down a little bit. So again, welcome if you're just joining in for our webinar today, Homelessness in Higher Education, Creative Housing Solutions. We're going to go ahead and get started. So our webinar is set for an hour and 15 minutes. Audio is muted, and so if you have questions, please put it in the Q&A. We will come to it towards the end of the presentation. The session, as I said, is recorded, and we will send a copy of the recording, the PowerPoint, and all additional resources at the end, probably either tomorrow or early next week. Awesome. Here is a little bit about our agenda for today. So we're going to start with some brief introductions. We're going to do a really small overview of college homelessness, kind of looking at some of the numbers, some baseline, some ground setting. We're going to hear about two amazing programs that are providing housing options for our students experiencing homelessness on the college level. We'll do a quick little panel. I'll ask some questions for our panelists here, and then we'll turn it over to you to ask our panelists some questions. And again, our learning objectives today, we want to hear more about Neighborhood Coalition for Shelter and Homelessness. We're excited to have them joining us this morning or afternoon, wherever you are at, and then take away some actionable strategies to try to implement and replicate this program wherever you are. So to get started, my name is Jillian Sitar, and I am the Director of Higher Education Partnerships at Schoolhouse Connection. If you are not familiar with Schoolhouse, here is a little bit about us. We are a nonprofit based in DC with a mission to overcome homelessness through education. And we do that by providing practical assistance. We do strategic advocacy, both on the federal and state level. You can learn a little bit more about us by here, let me enable the captions. My apologies for that. You can learn more about us by checking our website or signing up for our newsletter. And to get us started, I wanted to share some baseline numbers of when we're talking about college students experiencing homelessness. What does that look like? How many students are there? I'm excited to announce for the very first time, we actually have federal data that the Department of Education has done through the National Center for Education Statistics. This was just released earlier this year, and it found that about 23% of undergraduate students are experiencing food insecurity. And then about 8% of undergraduate students are experiencing homelessness. So we're really happy to have this numbers. Again, this is the first time we ever have this sort of like federal data, some sort of baseline number for college students experiencing homelessness. In the past, you might have seen some Hope Center surveys that have been done for many years, including this one that I linked here on the slide. This was done was released in 2021. So this was a great capture of looking at the numbers of our college students during the fall of 2020. And they found about 14% of college students were experiencing homelessness during that time. And I also want to note for the National Center for Education Statistics, that number, they conducted this information in the spring of 2020. So for both of these stats was from the fall and the spring of 2020, which many of you know, intense times with the pandemic. So we actually anticipate some of these numbers to be a lot higher than what was represented in both of these surveys, since many of our students might have been not had perhaps the technology to fill out these surveys, or they were not in school during that time or decided to take a gap year in between the spring of 2020 and the fall of 2020 due to a lot of remote learning that was happening. So just wanted to give this baseline of kind of when we're talking about college homelessness, what are the stats? What are the numbers? Do they exist on your campus? The short answer is probably yes. And we're going to talk through some creative housing solutions to help support our students. So with that, I'm going to turn over to our first panelist, Anne from the Neighborhood Coalition for Shelter, to share a little bit more about her program. Anne, take it away.
Okay, thank you, Jillian, and good afternoon. My apologies, I'm coming to you from an improvised setup since there is COVID in my house. So should a cat barge in or construction noise interfere, I apologize in advance. So I'm Anne Shaloff. I am the CEO of Neighborhood Coalition for Shelter. Unlike most of you, we are not in higher education. Our mission is homeless services. And you can see actually on your screen our mission statement. We provide New Yorkers who are homeless or at high risk of homelessness with a home, a community, and access to the services that they need to thrive. We were founded in the early 80s in response to widespread homelessness back then. And that was really the first time that we had witnessed that phenomenon. And we were one of the first organizations to respond to it. And since that time, we've really continued a tradition of innovation. We've evolved over the years to where today we offer a number of supportive residences as well as non-residential services. And our newest innovation is what you're going to hear about today, the NCES Scholars Program for unhoused college students. Next slide. So to give you a little bit of the genesis of this program, we started to think before COVID when we began to hear statistics about the number of homeless students. And really at the time, it was school children in New York City shelters. And we thought, well, we really want to do something about this, but we don't have that much experience working with children. But then we started to see the statistics on college students, in particular the Hope Center statistics. And we were just floored because this was not a phenomenon we realized existed. Those statistics were staggering, and this was just not something on our radar. So we didn't know it existed, but we knew it was something we could probably do something about. Because since 2009, we had been operating Lewis 9 House, which is a supportive residence for young adults who've aged out of foster care or who've been homeless and had a mental health or substance use diagnosis. And there we provide housing, but we also provide on-site comprehensive supportive services, including case management, mental health services, vocational education and employment supports. And a number of our residents had actually been enrolled in college while living in our residence. You can see one of them on the slide. And we had helped them in various ways, and we were familiar with the challenges that they experienced. Next slide. So we reached out to the Hope Center, which has already been mentioned. And as it happened, right around that time, I was told that they were about to release a report specific to the City University of New York, CUNY. That's the public college system here in New York City. And as you can see, that data, and this was based on 2018, but that showed that 14% of the students there had experienced homelessness over the past year, and 55% had experienced housing insecurity. And in a university system, the size of CUNY, which is about 240,000 students, you can imagine that's, about 34,000 students. Again, a staggering number. Now, as an organization, we know a lot about homelessness. And it struck us that these students were persisting despite these incredible challenges that we knew and understood. And that suggested to us that they were resilient and that they had the drive to succeed, and we felt we could help them. Of course, right around then, as Jillian mentioned, COVID struck, and we pivoted to serving the people in our existing programs. But after a hiatus, we resumed planning in 2021, and in the next slide, you can see we launched just about a year ago NCES Scholars. It is a pilot program providing year-round housing and on-site supportive services for unhoused and housing insecure college students. There you can see one of our residents in the kitchen of his apartment. And we are serving them there with the goal of ensuring that their basic needs are met, that their challenges are being addressed, so that they can really focus on their studies and making more sustained progress toward a degree. Next slide, please. So this is the residence. It is an apartment building in Long Island City, Queens. That's a borough of New York City, for those of you not familiar. The students all live in this one building, but they are interspersed with other tenants. They have private bedrooms and shared 2- and 3-bedroom suites. They share kitchens and bathrooms, but no living room or common room. There is common space in the building. There's a library, a gym, and some other amenities. We currently have space for 23 students, but we're in the process of expanding that to 29. We recognize, though, that housing is just one part of this equation. Some students may move in and say, thank you, this is great, I've got my bed, the roof over my head, I'm good. Others, though, are going to be coming in having been wrestling with the challenges that may have contributed to their homelessness, the kinds of experiences that led them there. Some will have mental health or substance use disorders, and all will have had the trauma of homelessness or housing insecurity. So we offer comprehensive on-site supports modeled on supportive housing like our Lewis 9 house that I just described. Our program director, Mary Jacobs, who you are going to meet in just a little while, is a licensed social worker. And we also have a resident aide there right now, much like a dorm has an RA. So he is living on site. And we're looking to hire another case manager to service the students. And our goal there is to connect the students with resources on campus or at NCS or in the community for basic needs, financial literacy, mental and physical health, tutoring, employment support, not to duplicate services, but to ensure that they are available and that students are able to access them. Next slide, please. So you're looking at a map showing all of the CUNY campuses around New York City. Our site is pinpointed, and the colleges we are currently serving are highlighted. As you can see, there are many other campuses that we could and would like to serve. Our program is actually called NCS Scholars LIC for Long Island City, the implication being that there will be other NCS Scholars programs. A number of our students are coming from LaGuardia Community College, which is the highlighted school closest to our residents. Over half, though, are coming from Medgar Evers College in Brooklyn in the lower part of the slide. And Medgar Evers was chosen as a campus to collaborate with very intentionally. They are a 4-year college, and they have a well-developed program to serve basic needs, Transition Academy. And Waleed Boone, the head of that program, may even be on this call. And that program supports students with basic needs assistance. And we were very purposeful about collaborating with a school that had somebody for us to work with. And it's been an important relationship. It helps in identifying the students, in getting the referrals, and in avoiding duplication of resources so that we can really support students from both sides. Next slide, please. This is actually the orientation of the first group of 13 students who began moving in last October. I believe this group is all from Medgar Evers. Students now are being referred by CUNY schools or from New York City youth shelters. And it's those entities that determine their eligibility. They're then interviewed by Mary, the program staff, who also confirm eligibility. They attend an orientation like what you see. They sign a program agreement and a student handbook that spell out the rights, responsibilities, and expectations. Things like their academic requirements. They need to remain in good standing at school, be going full-time. They're expected to abide by the rules in the student handbook, as well as in the apartment building where they're living. They're participating in an evaluation. And I should note that the program agreement establishes occupancy rights, but they don't have leases. The other thing I want to note is that the program director has the discretion to waive almost all of the requirements under extenuating circumstances, because we recognize that for some of these students, progress may not be linear and that there may be issues that are going to arise, and we're prepared for that. Next slide, please. This just gives you a little bit of background about the students themselves, what they're majoring in. All are BIPOC, the majority are Black, about a third identify as Latino. Most are around 20 or 21. You have to be 18, you have to be an adult, but there's no upper limit. And our oldest student right now is 48, which kind of skews the average a bit, but there's no upper limit. All are single adults. Right now, we're not housing families or parenting students, but we hope to be able to do that in the future. Next slide, please. Okay. This just shows you some of the media attention that this program is getting. The CNN piece that you see actually is nice. It features both us and Homelessness, Eric's program that you're about to hear about. It's getting a lot of attention because I think it really resonates with people. As I said at the outset, we had no idea that student homelessness was an issue. It's not on many people's radar. I think when a lot of people, by no means everyone, but when a lot of people think about college, they think of people burning the candle at both ends with, studying and partying. These students are burning the candle at both ends with trying to find a place to sleep, trying to eat, working too many hours, and going to school. And I think a lot of people, when they hear about this, really want to support these students. Let me just mention that I think my colleague is putting some of the links to these articles in the chat. In any case, as I said, people recognize that these students are doing something extraordinary and want to support them. And so many of them do. And finally, next slide, please. The data here that you're seeing in this slide suggests that the support will pay off. The slide, I think, on your right shows that a person with a bachelor's degree from CUNY will earn more than twice as much as somebody with no post-secondary degree. And an associate's degree also represents a substantial increase in earnings potential. At the same time, the slide on the right shows that we can provide the housing and the supportive services and everything that we do for far less than the cost over $50,000 of housing someone in a New York City shelter. So we believe this is an investment that really has a tremendous return, and that it's an investment that we as a society should be making. So thank you for listening to me, and I look forward to now hearing from Eric.
Great. And we just have one quick question.
Sure.
Is this transitional housing, do students pay a subsidized rent? Can you answer that before we transition to Eric?
Yes, they are not paying rent right now. That is for a number of reasons having to do with the building that they are housed in. It is our expectation at some point that they will pay rent or be able to obtain some sort of voucher to support them. Right now, what we are doing, and we may talk about this a little bit later, is encouraging them that since they are not paying rent and they are not paying a program fee, although we may collect a program fee at some point, they need to be saving that money toward the time when they leave the program and have, security deposit and rent and a nest egg to get started.
Great, thank you. So we'll transition to Eric to hear about Homelessness, and we'll have time for questions at the end, as well as the questions that we have prepared. All right, Eric, turning it to you.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Jillian, for hosting this, and thank you, Anne, for reaching out to invite me to participate in this webinar. It's so great to see more and more programs that are being developed across the country to support college students who are experiencing homelessness. And I'm really excited just to be a part of this movement. So my name is Eric Hubbard. I am the Director of Development and Strategic Partnerships for Homelessness. Homelessness means youth in Spanish, and we are a nonprofit housing provider that provides shelter and permanent housing to youth and young adults who are experiencing homelessness in Los Angeles County. We're a little bit over 30 years old as an organization, and we provide a wide variety of housing options within our continuum of care that are really designed to meet youth where they're at and help them stabilize and use housing as a tool to help them achieve their goals. So within our programs, we have resources such as emergency shelter, transitional housing, host homes, and family reconnection to help youth really connect back with any kind of family that they may have. We have permanent supportive housing, affordable housing, and wrap-free housing, which is a rental subsidy program. And then we have our college-focused housing opportunities, which I'll speak more about today. Just in our most recent fiscal year, we housed 675 participants throughout all of our programs. And we're really excited to see the impact that housing is having on their ability to just maintain that housing. Having such a wide variety of options within our continuum really allows us to place youth in the right situation for themselves. And about 45% of the folks that we serve are now in our college housing program. So you can go to the next slide. So our College Success Initiative was launched in 2016. This came as we, as a housing provider, were starting to expand into more of those longer term housing options that I was just talking about, and saw that there was a need for us to try and connect the youth that we are already serving with educational opportunities, knowing that homelessness is such a complicated situation for folks to live in, and there's no one reason why especially a young person becomes homeless. We wanted to understand what can we do to help them build their long-term prospects and income, knowing that many of our youth didn't have the best school opportunities or experiences the first time around. So we started approaching our local community colleges in Los Angeles and started seeing how do we just get more of our youth onto campus for tours, to meet with financial aid, to gain access to programs like Guardian Scholars, which works with foster youth. And that's when our counterparts at these schools started asking us if we could house students who are experiencing homelessness. And it was interesting to us because we weren't really aware of this population, even though we'd had over 20 years of experience operating shelters in, within 5 miles from many of these schools. We weren't seeing students coming to our programs. And that's when we started learning through the anecdotal information that these colleges were telling us, plus research coming out from the Hope Lab, that in LA, about 1 in 5 community college students was experiencing homelessness. And we saw that there was this real big disconnect between college campuses and the homeless system. And we saw that there was a need for us to kind of find a way to integrate and bring our services onto campus so that we could start meeting students where they're at and providing them with safe and stable housing that would help them really achieve their academic goals and move their lives forward in school. And that's really the origin story of our College Success Initiative. So we started launching this program in 2016 by co-locating staff on college campuses close by to us so that we could start to create a referral program and use some discretionary funding from our local county board of supervisors and some private foundation support in order to create housing options, primarily using rapid rehousing, which I'll talk about in a little bit, as a model to help students move into safe and stable housing close to campus so that they can really focus on their academic goals and eventually graduate or transfer from that community college. Over the first couple years of this program, we're just operating this program within LA on a very small basis, but we were also able to start working with advocates like John Burton Advocates for Youth, which is a statewide advocacy organization here in California that really focuses on the needs of foster youth. And they were able to take our model and translate that into legislative language and create what's called the Homeless and Housing Insecure pilot program. And now it's no longer just a pilot program. But this is AB 74, which was passed in 2019 and took effect in 2020, which replicated our approach with colleges partnering with nonprofit housing providers across the entire state of California. And that allowed us to really expand our program using the state funding to begin working with what's now 10 different colleges and Cal State universities throughout Los Angeles County. The majority of which are using this AB 74 dollars, but a few of them have identified other funding streams that they can use to bring our services to connect students experiencing homelessness with the housing support they need. We can go to the next slide. So through our program, we recognize that our approach uses campus by campus model of having a partnership with a specific college in order to create a referral system and a shared case management system with that college. And we also understand that there's not just one type of housing that students will need. We work with youth, the traditional 18 to 24-year-old students, but we also work with older students. We work with parenting students as well. And so we wanted to make sure that we have a really wide variety of housing options that can meet the needs of the wide variety of students who are experiencing homelessness. So our program incorporates models such as bridge housing, which is when we will master lease as an agency an apartment and place 2 to 4 students into that same shared living room, where that helps us bring the cost of housing down per student and creates this kind of shared housing environment for students. Affordable housing, which is where students are starting to pay into that cost of housing in order to, as they develop more income and their ability to save, maybe so that they can have their own private room, but still have a shared apartment with another student. Rapid rehousing, which is where we have a rental subsidy that we provide directly to a landlord. So this allows a student to sign their name on a lease and have all of the rights as a tenant within an apartment, but their housing is subsidized by Homelessness, and we make our payments directly to landlords, and over time that student takes on more and more of that cost of housing until they're able to really take on the full cost of that lease. Prevention services are when we work with students who are currently housed but are facing eviction. And so we are able to help them catch up on rent by, paying the current month. And then the student's able to also continue to work, continue to get back on their feet. But we always recognize that it's really important to prevent people from becoming homeless in the first place. And then motel support, which is where we can, really work on an emergency situation with any of our students who are literally homeless and need a safe place to stay for 1 to 2 weeks while we provide housing navigation and other services in order to connect them with housing. Next slide, please. I want to spotlight 2 of the sites that we really are proud to operate. In addition to the ones that we just mentioned, we also do like to see where we can create dorm style environments for our students. And so the first one is the Village at Cerritos College, which is a really unique program where Cerritos College is a community college here in Los Angeles County. And Homelessness was approached by a real estate developer. This is about 2018, 2019 or so, saying, we're developing this housing, pretty close to campus. We heard that you're working with homeless students. do you want to master lease this entire property? And the quote that we were given was about $26,000 per month for, 7 townhomes to master lease. And while that was a really cool opportunity, there was no way that our budget could maintain that. So we brought this opportunity to the campus, and the school actually decided that it was worth it for them to make this investment as a real estate opportunity, where they can buy all these townhomes, which was brand new construction, master lease this out to Homelessness at a very significant discount compared to what the market rate rent was, and allow us to operate this on a day-to-day basis to provide housing to students experiencing homelessness. And so we have a mix of bridge housing and affordable housing opportunities where students are either living rent-free or they're living paying between $90 to $180 per month in rent. And this is a really great example of how a college itself, which with much more resources than us as a nonprofit, was able to make this real estate investment, but hand over the day-to-day opportunity to manage these units to Hoven's and operate this as a dorm style environment for students from that campus. Our programs in Long Beach work with both Cal State Long Beach and Long Beach City College, which is a local community college. And so we saw that there was an opportunity for us to kind of leverage this regional connection between these two schools and allow us to master lease an apartment building in Long Beach to house students from both schools in that free bridge housing model. And so there we can house up to 40 students. We're kind of changing the number of units that we're leasing at the moment, so it's going to be a little bit less than what the slide says. But it's a great opportunity for us to kind of leverage the support that we're getting from 2 different campuses in order to create this really unique shared housing environment. The great thing about bridge housing is it allows students to live rent-free for a certain period of time while they start working, while they start saving and getting ready to take those next steps forward with their lives, and still using school as a their primary activity. You can go to the next slide. So our campus partnerships are really the cornerstone of how our program operates. We wouldn't be able to do this program just as the housing provider, just as the campuses wouldn't be able to do this program on their own, just as the academic institution. It really does take that really close sense of coordination to allow each of us to do what we do best, right? And so our care teams are consistently meeting with campuses after we've developed the MOU and created a referral process to really provide that day-to-day services to students, understand how they're doing on campus, how they're doing off campus, how do we leverage the resources each of us have, how do we make sure that we're all on the same page about the experiences and challenges that our students are having. And also making sure that we have a way of identifying who we're going to house through our programs, knowing what the numbers that both Jillian mentioned earlier and the sheer number of students who are experiencing homelessness. Unfortunately, our program doesn't have the capacity to serve everyone, right? So we had to create some kind of criteria that really looks at, ensuring students are homeless. This isn't necessarily a program for students like, oh, I'm living at home and I just don't want to live there with my parents anymore. But it's really for the students who are on their own, living on the streets, living in cars, couch surfing, and being in very unsafe situations. Making sure that, the students have a financial need. So one of the big parts of our program when students are housed is to focus on employment. But if we see a student who is fully employed, who could afford rent, and who just needs some housing navigation resources, that's something we can partner with, but we wouldn't necessarily enroll them, fully into the program. And then we also have to take some academic considerations to make sure that students that are being housed are actually part of that school. This isn't a college access program. This is a program that is for students who are currently taking usually between 6 to 9 units on a semester to semester basis. And we have a really flexible approach to the GPA. We do look for about a 2.0 GPA, but that is really flexible, understanding that homelessness can really decrease someone's GPA from when you don't have a stable home to be in. How are you going to do your homework and focus on school? So what we try and do and demonstrate is that after we house a student, how does that impact their GPA? You know, by taking away that day-to-day worry and stress of being homeless, are we able to help students actually improve their GPA more than what's their GPA when they're coming into the program? And then sharing our data and resources with evaluators from the CSU system, from the community college system, and our funders in order to really demonstrate the impact that this program is having. Next slide, please. So we have a pretty campus by campus referral process. And so our key points of contact are the basic needs centers, which pretty much every school in California at least has a basic needs center. And that is within the last few years that all these centers have launched. When we first started the College Success Initiative in 2016, 2017, you know, it was primarily working with this one person from campus on financial aid office, which is a really limited way of getting into the heart of the school. But as campuses develop basic needs centers, which include food pantries to help with the food insecure students, counseling centers, you know, to work with the different crises students are having, these became like the really great point people on campus in order to have this type of referral, because they're the ones that are really seeing the students who are being identified as homeless, who have these types of needs, and they're able to make this referral out to us. So either, you know, the campus may have a website portal like some campus do, some of our partnering campuses do, where they promote the resource and allow students to directly refer themselves to Homelessness, and we can conduct a screening as well as the college, or the school can do a first their first screening to make sure, you know, as students come into these basic needs centers, they start talking about what their needs and challenges are. Their staff there can really, you know, work with students to understand who could be a good fit for our program, who's eligible for services, and send those referrals over to us. Once we receive a referral, we do a housing screening tool, which identifies whether or not the student is homeless, what their needs are, based off of all of the roster of housing programs that we offer, what's the right type of fit that will meet the needs of the student. For example, a parenting student with young kids isn't going to be moved into our bridge housing, shared housing program. They're going to be prioritized for their own apartment. But meanwhile, in a 20-year-old, you know, who doesn't mind and can live with roommates, that would be a great opportunity for them to move into one of our shared housing, bridge housing opportunities. And then we provide that kind of case navigation or housing navigation to help the student, you know, find the right type of housing for them. And then we provide ongoing case management and support on a day-to-day basis, and have weekly conversations, weekly, bi-weekly, and monthly conversations with our campus partner to understand who's on the referral list, and also what are the resources that are needed for the students that are being housed. Next slide, please. So we're really excited about the impact that we're seeing through this program. In the last fiscal year, we housed 301 students. Some of them were carried over from the previous fiscal year, but you know, 301 students were served in housing throughout the 2022-2023 fiscal year. 96% of our students are able to maintain that college enrollment, graduate, or transfer from the community college or CSU. So we're really seeing, you know, a huge impact on students' ability to maintain housing once they're in our program. And 80% of our students are maintaining a course load of 9 or more units. So that's really important, because what we're seeing is, you know, in the past, students in community colleges who are experiencing housing insecurity and homelessness were taking 3, 4, 5, 6 years to complete a community college degree. And we wanted to bring that time down by helping them really meet their basic needs so that they can focus on their academic goals. And we also see that in California, you know, about half of, and this is not an apples to apples comparison, but it's to demonstrate what happens with at-risk populations. About half of California's community or former foster youth will enroll in community college, but less than 10% of them have been graduating. And so when we see, you know, with that at-risk population, how there isn't that kind of successful college retention and ability to move forward, when we see our population that's really staying enrolled semester to semester, is really encouraging to see these type of outcomes. And our partnership with Cerritos College, which is one of our oldest and also most comprehensive partnerships due to the different types of housing options that we have, has really started showing, you know, what the impact is on students' academic performance. Students are on average gaining about 0.2 points on their GPA which is still very significant to see that students are increasing their grades once they're moved into housing. When we compare our house students with the rest of the Cerritos College campus population, we see that 93% of our students have a comprehensive ed plan. The entire campus rate is about 68%. 41% of our students are achieving that degree or certificate within the first 2 years of enrolling in our housing programs. When the campus rate is about 15% of getting that within 2 years. And 14% of our students are matriculating into a 4-year institution compared with the campus rate of 11%. So what we're seeing is like a really high-risk population who probably wouldn't have had this type of success doing better than their campus peers who aren't receiving this type of comprehensive housing and supportive services. And that's not just comparing our students who have gained housing to students who are experiencing homelessness. This is comparing to the entire student body. So we're seeing a really significant impact on their ability to succeed. And, you know, I think it would be silly of us to really take credit for that. What we're seeing is these are incredibly resilient young people who are already investing in themselves by pursuing higher education. Homelessness is a significant barrier in their ability to succeed. Once you take away that barrier, you're able to unleash the potential that they have. So we view ourselves as, you know, opening that door, but the work that's being done is really being done by the students to focus on themselves, to access these resources, to ask for help in the first place, to keep persevering. It's just so inspiring. And if we go to the next slide, we can just see, you know, these are a few of our students who graduated in 2023. We were so excited to have over 40 students graduate from college in this over the summer. And, you know, we tried to have a little ceremony where we brought students from all of our campuses together on a hot June day here in Southern California to really celebrate their success, because we're just incredibly proud of all that they're achieving. It's incredibly amazing. You see students from every walk of life. You see the traditional younger students, you see the parenting students all coming together and having this type of, you know, way of recognizing their own individual journeys, but also seeing that they haven't been alone in this. There's so many other students that are also dealing and overcoming in the same types of situations. And so that's just why we're so excited to, you know, after these years and see policy successes and see the ability to grow the program to, this is what it's about when we see the students graduate and then move on to the next phase of their life. So that's why it's always so exciting to be able to be here. We're really lucky to be, for me to say that we're in California and knowing that there's these types of resources that are becoming more and more available across our state. We hope to see more and more of these opportunities created nationwide. And we're doing the best that we can to expand our services to support more and more students throughout our region.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Eric, for sharing a little bit about Jóvenes and Anne as well. These programs are amazing. I really wish that we could replicate it all across the country. I already had to answer a question and say, I'm sorry, these programs aren't nationwide yet. Maybe one day we can expand. I'm going to give Eric a little break before we have a few questions dedicated to him. And someone jumped in a few minutes late to the meeting. And can you talk through some of the minimum requirements for obtaining the housing that's available for NCES? Do you mind talking through some of those pieces?
Okay, Mary may also help me with this, and she actually does the enrollment, but you are referred by your college campus or by a youth shelter in one of the New York City youth shelters, and you need to be enrolled full-time. You need to be homeless or housing insecure. And, you know, as Eric said, it's not, oh, I don't like my roommate, I want to change my situation, I want to get out of my parents' home. It's, I'm living with 6 people in a studio and we take turns sleeping and I can't study. Or I am in a shelter, you know, it needs to be a really unstable situation. And they need to be low income. And these things are verified by their school and then by our program staff as well.
Hello everyone, my name is Mary. I would also like to add that we ask that they do have a minimum GPA of a 2.0, because that's what CUNY also requires. But of course, on a case by case, depending on someone's situation, if they are below, we are able to assess and see if we will accept that student. And of course, with the expectation that once they're stably housed and have the services that they need, that there will be an increase in their GPA.
Thanks, Mary. All right, Eric, we had a few questions during your session. Will Hovnez be expanding its services to the Inland Empire area in SoCal?
You never say never. I invite anyone to reach out to me if you are at a community college. What's important to us is to make sure that there's appropriate amount of resources. And so that's why we really appreciate the funding that's coming through the Homeless and Housing Insecure program, funded by the state of California, that allows us to really have that significant investment. Housing is expensive, Ann's program, you saw it's $30,000 per year. The investment pays off when you see the students succeed. Our program is anywhere from that $10,000 to $30,000 as well, depending on how long a student is in housing, the level of support they need, the type of housing. Housing is just expensive. So we're always excited for opportunities to expand. We are, potentially looking to move beyond LA County, which will be a significant moment for us as an agency. So if you're in the IE, drop me a line and we can stay in touch and see how do we continue to move forward together eventually.
Great. And Eric, can you talk through about your housing screening tool? Is it specific to your program? I'm not familiar with the screening tool that they listed.
They listed the VISPADAT.
Okay.
The VISPADAT is the California's HMIS tool that's being used to assess adults who are experiencing homelessness. In LA, we also have the Next Step tool, which is more for youth. We don't use that as necessarily the do we use VISPADAT? No, we don't use the VISPADAT to screen youth and students into our housing program. We do have, a questionnaire. We have to get a homeless verification. But what we do start doing, because we're not funded through the county resources, the traditional coordinated entry system to operate this, we don't have to have that as a barrier or as a process to get students housed. But what we have started doing over the last couple months is integrating all of our resources within our local homeless management information system, or HMIS. Hovnez is a county-funded agency as well. Our programs that are not for students are all within LA's continuum of care. We have a leadership role within that system, which is really addressing homelessness on a larger scale here in LA. And so we see that it's really important for us to also start integrating the data and what we're learning and what we can collect from our students into the local system as well, because that gives us a couple opportunities. One, better ability to attract students in our case management process. But two, it's really demonstrating the need is out there to make these investments in students who are experiencing homelessness, and that there's ways that local resources can be leveraged with the state resources and the college resources in order to address this population and these challenges that they're having. And it also gives us the opportunity to do the VISPADAT assessment and the Next Step tool assessment for the appropriate population, so that as we continue to work with our students, we understand there may be some kind of longer term support that's needed beyond what Hovnez is able to provide through this college program. And if students are eligible for other types of housing support, we want to make sure that we're leveraging as many resources as possible. So no, it's not necessary for us to use the VISPADAT to get students housed into the program, but it is an assessment that we start using for students once they're housed into our program, in order to make sure we're able to have as many opportunities and options for them as possible.
Great. Well, we'll keep getting some questions coming in. I'm going to actually turn to the questions we have prepared, because maybe that will answer some of the questions that you all have. So I'm going to open it up. Would love to kind of hear from both of you, what what challenges have you experienced as you've been operating over the last few years? Have there been really, any sort of surprises that you found, any small wins? And if you want to talk about, have you made any changes or adaptations as you've been doing the program? Is there anything that you would have done differently? So I know that's like 3, 4 questions all in one. But maybe Anne, I'll turn it over to you and Mary to answer that first.
Okay. I would say we haven't experienced a lot of surprises, and that in itself is surprising to us. We figured we were going to encounter things we didn't expect, and that hasn't happened to the degree that we anticipated. As far as challenges, filling units, not for lack of need, but we don't have the robust system of liaisons on campuses or basic needs centers the way Eric was describing. So the students have need, but they don't necessarily present themselves anywhere or know where to go with that. That is why we started partnering with the school that did have such a program, because we knew that would have the best chance of getting us off to a good start and of identifying students right away to fill the housing. But the schools don't know who needs the housing. It's not their mission to know, and we really haven't developed the supports here. Although I should say it's starting, and the state university, the Chancellor John King has just established liaisons on the state university campuses. I think, Mary, you also had something about the family complications. Are you on, Mary? Do you want to take that?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Hello again, everyone. So yeah, we do have some students who do struggle financially. And when I meet with some of them to apply for New York City's HRA assistance, a lot of them don't, because they are on their family composition and they have a strained relationship with family members. And sometimes the head of household where they were kicked out of don't go down to HRA to remove them off their case. And so some of the students are stuck in a space where they may not be able to apply for assistance right away. So we've noticed that that's a challenge as well, and doing our best to help navigate that with them.
I think the other part of your question was around adaptations. Is that things we would, I don't know that we've implemented any specific changes. I think though we've seen things we would do differently in our next iteration, or were we starting over? I mentioned earlier that we are encouraging students to save the money that they don't need to spend on housing. We might have mandated that in some way. I think we might also have instituted some sort of summer requirement. The fact is, and Mary can correct me, but the fact is, all of the students did go to school or work or engage in some sort of a program over the summer, but we didn't have that kind of requirement. I think the other thing is really physical layout. The students are interspersed with tenants in a regular apartment building. We expect one day that we'll have our own property, but right now they want to know who else is here, and they are building a community, and they've been studying together in the library in the building, but they want to be able to gather more. Mary wants to have more community activities, and we don't have a space that's dedicated to us. So in our next iteration, we'll make sure we have, some sort of conference area or recreation space or whatever it is that's ours. Did I answer the questions? Did I get them all?
You did.
Okay.
You got all 4 questions I asked you.
Okay.
Eric, anything you want to add on your end, and just refresh your challenges, surprises, anything that you want, any adaptations, things that you would do differently over the last few years you've learned?
Yeah, I think one thing that we all had to experience was launching this program or the significant expansion of it during COVID too. Right, you know, when we were opening the village at Cerritos College, that was the same month that everything was being shut down and campuses all went virtual. So I think that was really a challenge for everybody, but for our housing program to really do this type of launch campus partnerships when no one's on campus and everyone's working virtually was tough. I think what we learned from that experience, and moving forward, what we're always going to really be insistent on is making sure that we do have that kind of on-campus touchstone and support so that we can meet students where they're at, we can be on campus, because just having this housing opportunity doesn't guarantee that students are going to reach out and find it. You know, you really do need to make sure that there is that kind of campus-wide investment in outreaching and identifying the right types of students for it. I think one thing that we did also have to and are addressing is this. Originally, when we first started this, and probably when I first started talking to Jillian like many years ago, you know, we were saying this housing is for students for as long as it takes for them to graduate, right? And we've learned that that's not necessarily a sustainable model for us, for the funding streams that we have for the campuses. So we have to kind of utilize other types of approaches to make sure that we can help this as a time limited intervention that still allows students to stabilize, have that stable long-term housing that they need, but become more self-sufficient and independent over time, so that they're able to maintain that housing without our support while still pursuing that academic goals. And so, you know, it's about where a student is at in their journey, but we can't now promise a student who's in their first year, first semester, like this is going to be your home for the next 3 to 4 years, because budget wise, sustainability wise, it just doesn't work out that way. We'd love to have it as that, but it's also trying to give a realistic perspective on life. And you know, we want to make sure that we can help students not just succeed on campus, but be prepared for the next part of their journey. So that's been a bit of a challenge and a learning that we've been undergoing. I wouldn't say it's surprising, but it's just always inspiring just to see how amazing and resilient our students are. And it's always just a reaffirmation of why this is such an important type of intervention to be able to provide to help them, you know, accomplish their goals. It's just I don't get to meet our students on a day-to-day basis. I hear a lot of the stories from our case management, but just seeing and hearing all the things that they're overcoming, but the awesome things that they're doing is just always just really exciting.
Fantastic. Thank you both. Question about, you know, your program. How are both of your programs, how are they funded? How are you able to stay sustainable throughout these years? And I go to you first.
Okay. We are funded right now almost exclusively by philanthropy. We have some government funding, discretionary funding from individual elected officials, but right now there's no mechanism for funding this through the government. And that is something that we are spending our time now working on. We use our program as a pilot, as a model, and we're really trying to show people that this is an investment well worth making. You know, Eric's talking about the amazing things the students are doing. And if we can get them to graduation, many of them, maybe not all, but many of them will never need the safety net again. So it's really something that should be publicly funded. And we point to California and we shame New York. And we say, you know, look, you know, we've spoken with Amy Lemley at J-Bay. We've spoken with Eric. We know what's going on, you know, the wonderful things in California and the government support there. And New York doesn't like to be behind California. So, you know, we try and use that bit of leverage. So, you know, we recognize that private funding is not sustainable long-term, and we're not growing beyond the funding we know we have so that we can keep our commitment to the students we admit. But we're also really working all the angles to try to get to the next step. And we're starting to see that maybe there are some avenues through the existing homeless services system in New York City where we may be able to create a model that we can squeeze our program into. So stay tuned, we're working on it.
Got to throw out for the West Side for California. We're so lucky out here to have that kind of support from the legislature, to have this funding that was started as a pilot program, with just a 3-year runway to become, much more extended and becoming, I think, a semi-permanent part of California's budget. It's not for every college in California, but they're rolling it out to more and more campuses through the Homeless Housing Insecure program. So we're really grateful for J-Bay for advocating and creating that. And we're really proud to just be one of the many organizations that are able to provide this types of resources to students in need out here in California. We started as a program that was relying on like Anne's program, some discretionary funding from local politicians and board of supervisors and private philanthropy. That's how in the first 3 or 4 years of this program, we housed, maybe 100 students combined. But then when we were able to get that state funding, we were able to really take off and house over 450 students over the last couple of years. And, I think it's just showing that, of course, there's a need, and we need to make sure that we're always demonstrating that there's a need out there. But then when you demonstrate that there are programs that and local partnerships, the point of this is to say colleges, especially for y'all at higher education institutions, you all shouldn't be the ones providing this housing to homeless students. You shouldn't be the ones driving around looking for apartments to and talking to landlords. But there should already exist in most places, a homeless system. And so once you start having those conversations and connections and bridging those gaps between academic institutions and the homeless system, that allows you to leverage both types of resources and connections for the nonprofit housing provider to start talking with their local continuum of care. I've seen other programs, in other places that are really just leveraging that kind of local support for homelessness and dedicating a portion of that to students from a particular school. And it allows the college itself to start working with, their statewide agencies or, within their district to identify resources that can be dedicated for this population. And so I think it's just really important for those types of conversations to always be happening, because it can really allow for really important partnerships to blossom and ultimately house and support students.
That is great advice. And I'm just curious if either of you have any more advice to give to perhaps shelters or service providers that want to break into this college specific focus group. Would welcome that to see if there's any other tidbits you would like to share for folks that want to try to replicate this.
I would offer two things really. One is remember always that housing is not enough, that you need to have the supportive services available for students. And again, as Eric said, this is not the business of colleges. It's not their mission. So they really should be, partnering with experienced providers. The other thing I would say is learn from others. Eric has been very generous with advice when we were starting the Hope Center, Rashida Crutchfield's at Long Beach. People who've been doing this work have been eager for us to get on board. And so I would say to anyone thinking about starting out, talk to us, talk to others. I think we all want to see this happening more. The other thing is talk to students. We did focus groups and research, and again, talk to people who are already doing this work. You want to make sure you're providing what the students need, not what you think they need, think they should need, imagine they might need. So really, do your homework and learn from others.
Anything else you want to add, Eric? I know you gave some
No, I
relationship.
mean, I think that's great advice from Anne. You know, always reach out, talk to. I mean, I always try and make sure that when a housing provider reaches out and says, "How did you guys do what you do?" we can be as helpful as possible. Um, I think it's really important for housing providers. You know, for us, we, have our decades of experience working with us homeless youth, and we had never worked with homeless adults before. And we hadn't, I think it was really important for us to reframe our approach to make sure that we could do something that was student specific. Many of our students do experience the same challenges: mental health, physical health, other types of trauma related challenges that youth and folks who are experiencing homeless have. But you still need to have that kind of a student-centered approach that also incorporates what their goals are academically, and understands that, there's going to be a difference in working with a homeless student versus someone else who's experiencing homelessness, who's not enrolled in school, and being able to just have those small differences in your case management and shift your organizational philosophy for that program. And so I think that has been quite an experience for us to learn and grow in that area, leverage all the knowledge that we have in providing housing and supported services, but add into that knowledge about what it's like to house a homeless student.
Fantastic. I'm going to give the presenters just a little break from talking. We have about 9 minutes left. And so I'm just going to run through some last minute resources, putting the contact information on the slide so folks can take a quick picture here, and then we'll come back to your questions in the chat. So again, here's our resources: our Schoolhouse Connection page, our FAFSA page, our Youth Leadership and Scholarship Program, the 2 links for NCES and Homelessness here. I also want to share that we have another webinar that's happening at the end of this month. So I see that there's some liaisons here on the call, which is fantastic. We're going to be doing a webinar with our friends from Georgia to talk through how to help our students transition to and through higher education. So the link is in the chat, but you can also scan this QR code here as well. Again, we have our scholarship program. We're so excited to highlight our scholars, our bread and butter within Schoolhouse Connection. So the website is here on the slide. Again, QR code as well. It's a really great opportunity for students to meet other students who have those shared experiences, come together, build that cohort. And then we have 2 dedicated staff members on our team to support these students to and through higher education. And then opportunities for you all to connect with us socially. And then I want to put our contact information here as well. And just want to say, you will get a copy of this PowerPoint, this recording, and all other available resources emailed to you as well. I do just want to have these last few minutes for our questions here. We have someone talking about accepting referrals from school district homeless liaisons. Many of these liaisons help high school seniors, particularly unaccompanied homeless youth, with the FAFSA and applying for college. Can a homeless liaison direct a graduating senior to be considered for either of your 2 programs?
I think we don't necessarily have that direct mechanism for a homeless liaison to refer to our college focused housing options. My suggestion with that is be in partnership with and I hope that more and more schools will have that kind of basic needs resource, or at least the financial aid office. But that's what we would do. We would direct, if a homeless liaison wanted to start a partnership with us, because we're not a college access program, and students need to be enrolled in college in order to qualify for our college focused housing programs. We would request that they would start creating that kind of partnership with their local college institution and see if there's a pipeline that can be developed in order to get students into our housing. I mean, we'd be flexible in our approach if that was part of what the school and campus and community wants to do. But we have limited resources, and we want to make sure that whatever we are able to accept into the program is also on board with what the college is trying to accomplish.
I think our answer is very much the same, that you already need to be enrolled and referred by your school or the shelter where you're residing.
Thank you. We had an attendee ask, don't some homeless youth might qualify for a free room and board at the institution, at the university? When would this be appropriate versus staying on campus? I assume this being one of your services. Do your programs only serve students attending community college?
So our program, first of all, the local community colleges here don't have housing on campus. And so that's not an option we don't just serve community college students. We do have partnerships with a couple Cal State universities. And some of those do have dorms on campus. They don't have, as far as I know, really that long-term option for on-campus housing for a homeless student. Some of them will have an emergency housing option on campus for 2 weeks or so. And so that's been a really good referral system for students that are in that on-campus emergency housing to be referred to our support because it's that longer term option. So because there's not that really, availability of on-campus housing resources dedicated for homeless students, that's why one of the reasons why our programs need to exist.
Yeah, I think Mary's going to take this. Mary, you here?
Yes, I'm here. Can you actually repeat the question? I was reading it and it disappeared.
Sorry, I might have answered too quickly. So the question was, all right. Don't homeless youth qualify for free room and board at universities? When would it be appropriate to use one of your services rather than just staying on campus? Does your program only serve students attending community colleges?
Okay, yes. So in New York City, on-campus housing is limited. And then when you also think about some people's financial aid package, they may not be able to afford to stay on campus. NCES scholars serve students who are attending CUNY, so that is both four-year institutions and community colleges.
And whoever the person that posted it, if you know of an institution that provides free housing, free room and board to college students experiencing homelessness, let us know, because we'd love to highlight that institution as well. I know some schools will have priority housing, like in California with AB 1228, they provide priority housing to students experiencing homelessness. Some institutions might have specific housing scholarships to provide students experiencing homelessness, but I haven't heard just like a blanket statement like all schools in this state for students experiencing homelessness get free room and board. So if you're at that institution, let us know. We would love to highlight you.
I think also you've got Eric from Los Angeles and us from New York. So for the most part, you're really talking about urban centers, and the opportunities to do anything like that are going to be greater at schools that have a real dorm campus life.
All right, we just got another question here. It's probably our last one for the day. Does anyone know if anyone's using a model like this for other post-secondary pathways like apprenticeships? Most apprenticeships do not have a central hub or a connection space like a college.
I don't know. We'd like to try and develop something like that, but I'm not aware of a program that's directed just for apprenticeship like this.
And if anyone does, let us know. And so when we send out the materials, we can share that out with the group. But I mean, it might exist. We just are not aware of it. So I love coming together because we're always learning from one another, sharing what's happening in one part of the country with another part. So let us know. All right, team, we made it to the end. Thank you all so much for coming together to hear from our two amazing service programs, NCES and Homelessness. Thank you again for tuning in. You will get a copy of this PowerPoint and the recording sent to you in just a little bit. Thank you again and have a great rest of your Thursday.
Thank you. Thanks, Jill.